Hello,
Hi, this is Karen. I'm
Hi,
not
Karen.
Jamie. I'm not Jamie Pike. I'm Jamie tonight.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. You sound good.
Okay, I have a new headphones.
Oh, excellent. Yeah, you sound really good.
Doesn't make me any smarter.
Well, at least we won't be battling with the microphone, which is nice.
Yeah, okay.
I did.
Oh, good. Okay. Did you get my chat?
Yeah, I was actually just because you had mentioned that, I'm trying to figure out how to get that.
Do you
Yeah,
see that
I will.
the bottom, or if, sometimes there are little dots that say more.
Yeah, I know. It's looking at that.
Yep. Are you able to see them? Yes, because you just saw mine.
Yeah, I just saw yours. I can open it with the chat bubble on the bottom, but I don't seem to be able to open the screen to the side, but I can figure that out. Or I can just keep monitoring the bubble.
Yeah.
How about hand raising? Is that something that,
Well,
are you you're recording these meetings, right?
yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now I'll just keep monitoring the chat
Okay.
bubble.
Okay.
Well, there
But
are,
I have not tracked hand raises before. Does that show up in the chat bubble?
it shows,
Can you guys hear us all right?
It should just show up in a separate
I think
hand raise. Let me.
the town administrator is not in.
if you look in that, on mine, it has a participants box.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And when you open that up in the bottom, it says invite, mute me, raise hand. I assume that's where it is.
right.
Got it?
But monitoring the raised hand is the,
Oh, I see. Oh, yeah.
There, I practiced for you. Can you see it?
Oh, good one.
practice
Linda-
what?
See, in the participant box, Linda has her hand raised, a little hand next to her
Microphone.
Oh,
name.
I see. It's a little
And-
blinking red light. Oh, no, it's a hand. Oh,
It's
yeah.
a little hand. Yeah.
Well, that's how I find that it works really good for Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission is I keep the participants screen is what I look at because it will show you everything all at once. Like you can move so you can see the chat, you can see who's there, you can see if they get a hand up, you can see if they're mute, all that stuff.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's pretty cool. Yeah.
Okay, I do not see the hand raising.
If you look
Ah.
at Linda, to the right of her hand, there's a blue hand.
Don't see it
I mean,
on
the
my
right
screen.
or name.
I'm gonna like make you a co-host, Sarah. How about that?
Okay. Yeah, but Brad sees it.
Right. So are you looking? Have you clicked on the participants?
Yeah.
I'm asking Sarah.
Oh,
It's got nothing to do with pictures of people. There's the mute, start video, participants, chats, share screen, record, reactions, all that stuff. Someplace on your screen.
yeah, I'm looking at it.
So click on participants.
Yeah.
Hello.
That should open up a
Hey,
window.
Jerry. I
show
see
you
the
all the people.
box.
Does it
Oh,
give
I
you the-
see your hand. Okay, groovy.
And how I get that is at the end of the number of people that are plugged in right now, it says invite, mute me. For me now, my screen says lower hand. So watch, I'm going to push lower hand. It's gone. It's gone.
Okay.
wow.
Now
That
I'll raise
doesn't
my
have that.
hand. Does that work?
I saw, yes, it does work.
Okay, are you seeing the agenda on your screen now?
Yes.
Okay, great.
But I only see a piece of it because I don't know how it's showing on. Yeah, that's better.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's the part when you hear people doing that, then you mute them.
Yeah.
I don't have.
People
the
should be muted when they are invited in, but okay, I'm gonna mute everyone. There we go. That was,
That was a very good move. And if people forget how to unmute themselves by looking for an icon, they can double tap their space bar.
mm-hmm. Hey, Betsy, is Lisa with you?
Oh,
you're-
she's muted.
Yeah. Can you see the people joining, Sarah?
Yes.
And you're able to admit them if they come in?
Yes.
Okay.
Linda, are you, who's Jamie Pike?
That's Karen. That's
Oh.
me.
That's you. That's what I thought. Okay, good.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, I think Lisa's here now.
Oh, good.
Karen, we don't see your face. We just see
I
your
know.
name.
Because I'm sharing my screen.
Okay.
So I'm going to be sharing the screen with the drawings. So you won't see me, but you can hear me.
Yes, we can.
Okay, it is almost 6 o'clock. One more minute. We'll give people. So Sarah, if people are wanting to in their waiting room, can you
So
just
you're-
admit them?
You're going
I'm
now.
talking.
Yes.
Yep.
It's interesting.
here.
I can,
You'll come
it
on.
appears that I can admit them only when I
I
get
won't stop
two.
video. Okay.
Okay, people are unmuting themselves and it's not a good idea.
I'll go over that in a minute. All right, it is 6 o'clock. I will open, this is Karen Fitzgerald. It says Jamie Pike, but it's not. I'm sitting in for Jamie as the host of this meeting. So this is Karen. Welcome to the planning board meeting, January 5th, 2021. This is our first meeting of the year. Tonight we have a few things on the agenda. I just wanted to start with a roll call of the planning board members. I'm going to read off the names so that people aren't talking over each other. I think that might be a little easier. Just say present when I read your name. Brad Howell,
Present.
Sarah Pyle,
Present.
Betsy Hardwick,
Present.
Lisa Heath.
Sure.
She's here.
We can't hear Lisa.
She's here. She's just setting up. She's behind
Okay.
me.
Yeah. Okay. Patrick Ban.
You guys hear all right?
He is not here. Okay. Jerry Bernstein,
Present.
Linda Kuhnhart,
Present,
Bob Lindgren. No. Karen Fitzgerald, present. Great. Well, welcome everyone. We have a few things to go through at the beginning of our meeting, and then we will get to the public hearing. Announcements and communications. I just wanted to talk about some items we've received. Receipt of revised plans from the Agent Meridian land surveyors for the Shattuck subdivision, case 20 SD03. Also in receipt of a lot line adjustment application for map 4, lots 28 and 18. We've also received subdivision application for map 11, lot 3. I have also received several letters regarding the Shattuck application, which we have received and are in our files in the office. And I also just wanted to go over a letter received today from Jerry Dawson Begley requesting written request for communications and correspondence for the Shattuck applications, cases 20 SD 03 and 20 SP 02. Our policy at Francistown is to publicly post all of the meeting minutes, agendas, and we will also make available any other letters and correspondence. We don't typically post those online, and but they would be available for anyone in the public to look at and read. And that is our typical policy for this kind of posting. I think that is all of the announcements. We have received also a letter from the BCM Environmental and Land Law regarding this case as well.
So in regards to the request for information, how that usually happens is an appointment must be made. If they're not happy with just the things that you spoke of that are already regularly available online, if they'd like to see the full file, they have
Yep.
the right to do that. But they make an appointment in either the planning board chair or the planning board secretary, or if neither of those two can make the accommodation, then we find someone from the town offices to do it. Typically, it has been either the chair or the secretary. You sit in the room while they touch the file record. If they want to have a photocopy, it's 25 cents a piece, and that's the procedure to date.
Great. Thank you, Linda. That's good. Yeah, so an appointment can be made. Just let us know. Okay, review of the minutes from December 15th. I hope everyone had some time to look over those minutes that were sent out after the meeting. And let's have a discussion on any changes or edits to those minutes needed from the planning board. Did everyone have a chance to look at them and go over the minutes from the 15th?
Yes.
Yes,
Any comments or changes?
I move to accept the minutes as presented.
Second,
Second? All in favor, you can raise your hand if we can
No,
see you. Yep.
Technically, we're required to do by these Zoom meetings. It must be by roll call.
right.
Okay, can I read off the names?
Yes, that's advisable.
Yep, Brad Howell. You have to unmute yourself,
oh, I
Brad.
thought I did.
Yeah.
Yes, sorry.
Sarah Pyle,
In favor.
Betsy Hardwick,
In favor,
Lisa Heath.
She's just joining us now.
Yep, I'll get back to you. Patrick is not here. Jerry Bernstein,
In favor.
Linda Kuhnhart,
Favor.
Karen Fitzgerald, favor. Bob Lindgren is not present. Great. So those meeting minutes are accepted and will be posted as final. Other business, water resources master plan. I just want to remind the board that our grant from the DES that we're using for this project is the deadline is May 31st. I have been in contact with Resilience Planning, and I just wanted to get that on our calendar and make that a priority so that we have this project completed by May 31st. Broadband update, I think Jerry sent out an RFP that went out for that. Jerry, do you have anything else you'd like to say?
No, it was included in the email. I just wanted to keep everybody up to date on what was happening. And that RFP, as stated, will be back the end of January with a review.
Great.
After that. Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. Other business from the board? Yes. Jerry, did you have something?
Oh, no, I was deciding whether to say it. Lisa is muted. I just sent her a note, but I don't think she is looking at that. Lisa, if you can hear me, you can unmute yourself. There she goes. Great.
I know.
Okay, there you go.
I'm unmuted now.
Nice.
Thanks.
Excellent. Okay. Okay, let's move on to the public hearing for case number 20 SD03, which is the continuation for the hearing for the subdivision and lot line adjustment from Ronald and Melissa Shattuck. Sitting on this case, we should do a roll call for that. Brad Howell,
Present,
Sarah Pyle,
Present.
Betsy Hardwick,
Present.
Lisa Heath,
Present.
Jerry Bernstein,
Present.
Linda Kuhnhart,
Recused.
Not sit.
recuses, Karen Fitzgerald. Okay. So those are the planning board members who are sitting on this case. Let me just open the plans received. Is that what? So we have Doug Broder and John, I think you're on as well from Meridian. Yes, Doug is there, I see. And I think, John, you were there somewhere.
Can you hear us all right?
Okay, yeah, there you go. Now we can hear you. Oh, there you go. Okay.
Can we add Jason Billigus as well, please?
And Jason.
Good evening, I'm here.
Okay, great. All right. Oops. So I have your plans here. Just let me know when to flip or change pages or zoom in.
Okay.
Can everyone see the plans on the screen? Thumbs up? Yes, okay. These are revised plans that we received in response to our last meeting. So why don't you go ahead and go through these for us, John or Doug?
I'll take that one, but I just want to double check. Doug, are you here? Can you hear okay?
Yeah, Doug Broder is here. If you can hear me, okay.
Great.
Doug, just wanted to see if you were checking in. Good evening, John LaFave from Meridian Land Services, representing the Shaddocks. Per our last meeting, we had several comments into revising the plans. Let me go through the checklist of what we've done since the meeting. The potential building locations shown on sheet 4 were revised to include moving the buildings and drives for 3 and 4, for lots 1 and 2. Lots 3 and 4 are in place because that's where they need to be. We have, do you actually have sheet 4? That's sheet 5.
I'm sorry. Yep, there we go.
Okay. So if you want to window into the area of lots 1 and 2 and show where the building locations are on the driveway, we've changed the locations of where they can be.
Right here.
Yeah,
Here.
1 and 2.
Yep.
Yeah. So we set lot 1 further back away from the road because we had the room to do that. We have revised note number 14 on sheet 1 was brought up that it had the wrong lot numbers.
Okay.
So as you can see, we said that proposed lots 3 and 4 have a proposed driveway access easement where before we had mistakenly put down 1 and 2.
Okay, right. All right. So that's, sorry.
Yeah, that's in regard to the access easement right there between the 2 lots, 1 and 2.
Okay. Right here.
That's correct. Yep.
Yep.
Okay. Go ahead and jump back into the notes. So note 15 was expanded to include a 25-foot no-cut restriction for lots 1 through 4. And the reason why we didn't go past that was because we have a separate landscaping plan from the site plan for that area. So let me just jump into note 15. We have the note that any trees along Stevens Road that are immediately adjacent to the stone wall shall remain undisturbed unless deemed unsafe by the Department of Public Works. The easement, or not easement, rather, the restriction of no cut that we're proposing is like a double security. We don't even really need to have the note about the stone wall, but we placed it there before, so we just left it alone. We did put in that, unless they're deemed unsafe by the Department of Public Works allows them some access to do trimming or tree removal should they deem something to be unsafe. So that's merely a permission for the town to be able to maintain the road should they deem the need to. We've added the 25-foot restriction from the stone wall, and we excluded the driveway openings, obviously. Says this area, along with several areas within the 100-foot buffer on lot 3-18, are to be reforested in accordance to the planting specifications on sheet 5 of this plan. So that's one of the new items that we've added is the sheet 5. But before you jump to that, let me go through the rest of our notes, because I'm sure we'll have a little bit of a conversation with that one. So
Okay.
let me just see. Okay, so I believe that those were the big revisions. Yes, we might as well jump to sheet 5.
Okay.
So we were in contact with the forester and we submitted a report. Dalton Mountain Forestry actually went out, looked at the site. He had seen the site before the snowfall. He understands the site because he's local to the area. His recommendations as far as replanting were to use certain species that were native to the area. So we utilized those species as they recommend them being planted, which was a 10-foot separation. So we have a planting plan which shows all these trees to be planting, which will start with the 25-foot from the face of Stonewall or the back of Stonewall on Stevens Road. All those trees will be planted there, and keep in mind there's 287 trees that are still in place between the beginning of Stevens Road and that back stone wall that will be intermixed within this planting plan. We also showed plantings to be added to the back of lot 318-2, where we went into the buffer, and also below lot 3-18-1, that area to be replanted. And we did not ask for a replanting on, or propose a replanting on lots 3 and 4, because per recommendations by the forester, he had said that this area will grow faster on its own than if we introduce new plantings, as long as there was stumping left behind. And there was no stumping in this area. The bottom of lots 3 and 4 in those areas were never grubbed or stumped. So that's why we have those areas hatched separately, saying that those areas will remain the way they are and grow back through the natural process, and still subject to a restriction, obviously from the town to 100 foot, but to introduce the local plantings would take longer than to let it grow back on its own. That is the bulk of my comments in regards to the revisions.
Okay. Thank you. I'm going to reopen the public discussion for the purposes of receiving new information. I know that there are some, sorry, people are, so I'd like to invite the board discussion and the attorney for, sorry, the attorney, is Amy on here?
Point of order for one moment, Madam Chair.
Yes.
I'd like to clarify, when you open the public hearing to accept information, I'm assuming that you're including all information received from 11/17 up until today?
Yes,
Thank you.
that's correct. Thank you. All information. All written information. Amy Manzelli. Okay, admit, there she is. I would like to invite the board for a discussion on the new plans that have been submitted. Questions?
Sorry, Karen, were you inviting public comment or board comment?
Board comment?
Which is first? You want the board comment first?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. I guess I can start. When I looked at the forestry or reforestation plan, I actually needed to get some clarification, and I had 2 conversations with Brian Camo regarding what this is. I mean, there's like 800 different plants or individual plants. And my question was, what can we expect out of that 800 or so plantings? And what's the timeline for growth? And he was very clear that the charge was to, whoops, I just lost. Can you still hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I just lost my Zoom screen, but I'm going to keep going. So he was very clear that the charge was to try to find something that would be soil stabilization and a visual shed or a visual buffer. And so essentially, I loved the photos of the very mature sugar maples and red oaks, but those were photos in the attachment that actually would be what they looked like in about 40 years. And when I had asked about the size and when the maturity would be, he talked about biological maturity versus visual maturity. And he thought in about 6 to 10 years, what we could expect is a 12-foot high hedge looking buffer. And that essentially the material, when I went back to New Hampshire Forestry's nursery site to understand what would be planted, red oaks, the seedling is between, each seedling is between 6 and 10 inches, sugar maple between 4 and 8 inches, hemlock with a 3-year seedling is between 6 and 10 inches. So essentially, maturity wouldn't happen for decades on most of these materials. And in about 10 years, we could get approximately a 12-foot buffer, high buffer. And just to put that in perspective, a 2-story house is approximately 20 feet. So I wanted to share that.
Okay, thank you.
I too had concerns that what was supplied to us is a reforestation plan, not a visual buffer plan. And I think as far as protecting slopes from wetlands, that seedlings planted densely probably have some protection, but visual protection is not going to be afforded by what's proposed here.
Well, the visual perspective of standing on the road, looking into the site, if there's something 12 feet high, unless you're 12 feet high, you can't see over it. So the buffer or the screening that he's proposing would be adequate, and over time would take place. The no cut restriction, we're putting back something that you want to see.
But our zoning requirement defines a buffer quite differently than what this proposal. Our zoning buffer is defined as 4 feet high at the time of planting.
Is that the zoning or is that the site plan regulations?
That's the ordinance. Buffer is defined as a strip of land at least 10 feet wide, and we've talked about 25 feet for this. Densely planted or having equivalent natural growth with shrubs and trees at least 4 feet high at the time of planting, and of a type that will be year-round dense screen at least 6 feet high within 3 years.
If I may, Sarah, that particular buffer definition is relative to the zoning only, and in particular to the open space portion of the subdivision regulations. So by just
Sorry.
renaming this and we're calling it a buffer doesn't mean it has to meet the zoning definition of a buffer. There's no, in the standard subdivision regulations, a requirement for a vegetative buffer. I would just like to point that out.
Okay,
Yes, it
Doug
is.
yeah, okay. Just please introduce yourself if
Yeah,
you're
sorry,
talking. Some
Doug
people can't
Broder
see.
with Meridian Land Services.
Okay.
That's all I had. Thank you.
I have a question too, Sarah, unless you have other comments on that. According to the forestry documents that you supplied, it looks like that outfit would be planting this
Yes.
material?
Yes.
Okay. And what about maintaining? Or any plan for maintenance, or is there any guarantee from him or that company for maintenance and or replacement of materials?
Go back to his last page, but he said that these plants that he had chosen would be unbelievable for the soils that are there, and take very well. I mean, no, I don't have that.
Okay.
Or be planting the plants, but
So Karen, that was
from a forestry standpoint, as far as.
Yep.
I don't know.
Yeah, that was a question I had asked him specifically about, how is it going to mature? He said essentially it was going to get extremely dense. There was going to be some natural dominant survival from some species and not others. He said it would need to be kind of cleaned out and weeded, but if you didn't do anything to it, that would be okay too. But he said essentially that it would get extremely dense and they aren't expecting them all to survive and make it because it's too competitive and compact.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I have to say, whichever way you look at this, I feel like, the planning board by various members has really voiced a concern about the visual shed, the character, the land suitability and all of that. And I find that these seedlings, while I'm sure they're wonderful and native, are less than for too long a time to provide the visual shed that we're looking for, or the protection of that, and to also be complementary to the rest of the vegetation along Stevens Road.
Well, as Doug has mentioned, the only part of the subdivision regulations that call it the buffer of the open space, but they want to guarantee a buffer because they're doing such a large compact area. Our houses are spread out. We're offering to replant this guaranteed. Granted, it's not overnight. It achieves what the board's goal is, and it may be a few years, but it will grow back, and it'll grow back very dense. And I think our offering is, is very suitable. We worked with the forester, for well over a week and got his input and put a plan together in regards to your concerns. So I was more hopeful that you would be rather receptive to this.
May I just come back with something? I just to be sure that I had not misquoted the zoning ordinance. The buffer definition that I read is actually under the definitions portion of our zoning ordinance, section 8. It is not under the open space development ordinance. I read the one that is under our definitions. And as we've pointed out before, yes, subdivision regulations are about what one of the pieces of information that we're required to follow, and we cannot approve anything that's contrary to the zoning ordinance.
Well,
If you look at section 8 of the zoning ordinance under definitions, I think it's 8, you'll see the buffer definition.
And then the only other place we see the buffer referred to is in the open space regulations.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
And then the only other place you see the buffer referred to is in the open space regulation
That's actually not true.
or the site plan. Um, Where are the other?
Chair, if I may, I just want to add that it's the zoning board that's the sole town body that has the power to interpret and enforce the zone. So I think we should stick with the site plan regulations for the site plan component of this meeting and the subdivision regulations for the subdivision component.
Jason, have you read section 1 of the subdivision regulations where it says specifically that to ensure compliance and conformance with federal, state, local laws and regulations, ordinance and plans, that those are things that the planning board has to consider?
I was looking at the state
Have you
statutes
also
that
read
provide.
section 5A1 where it specifically says subdivisions must also conform with any pertinent federal, state, or local laws, ordinances, or regulations, and with the town's master plan? I think you continually saying that we can't consider the zoning ordinance is extraordinarily misleading for anybody who's unfamiliar with the laws of the town of Francistown. Of course, we must follow the zoning ordinance.
Okay,
But- But the state, I'm talking about state law.
We have to follow state law, we have to follow town law, and we have to follow subdivision regulations.
Brad, if
Right.
you're speaking, you're
Muted.
muted.
Okay. Well, Sarah, maybe you could cut to the chase. So I think the point probably is, and I'm not saying you're wrong, but there's a definitional thing of what a buffer is. And is there a place other in the zoning regulations where it's required? Other than
It is
just
one of the
defined?
things that we should and must consider when looking at approving a subdivision. And I thought that this board has talked about a buffer since day one of this, that we would, I mean, I think the majority of people have advocated that a buffer is a requirement. You may not feel that way, Brad, but I believe
No,
the
no, please.
Conservation Commission talked about it, a number of the board
No,
members
no,
have talked about it. So
no,
I thought the
you're-
question of buffer was put to bed.
No, that's not what I'm saying. I think, no, I'm not saying that, honestly. I'm just saying that, there's a definition and then are there other provisions in the zoning ordinance that it relates to? And I don't know that. I mean, that might make, if maybe it does, maybe it doesn't, I don't know.
I think, to not
Getting in
get
the weeds.
to not get hung up on the definition of buffer, it was very clear, at least from my perspective, that what the planning board stated last time on December 15th, and pretty significantly, was the desire to have a buffer because there are other things to consider, like preservation of existing features. Well, they're gone. The trees are gone, and trees are identified as one of those features. The master plan, harmonious development, all of those things lend it to be considerate of that visual buffer. All of those things play in, and essentially, it was a request, or at least made known that the plan, it was important to to be mindful of those other issues that impact the harmony, the preservation, the character. That's why, not so much the definition of a buffer, but that's what we felt was needed to protect those other provisions in our master plan and in our subdivision plan requirements.
So I understood that, and this is what we proposed, to have that. It's not going to be overnight, but by doing the subdivision, it adds the security of a no-cut restriction within that 25-foot corridor. The subdivision wasn't present. The RSA or the state statutes allow you to cut 50% along the roadway with any year. So, I mean, they could continually cut and do what they did to the property. By doing the subdivision, you know, we're proposing this no cut restriction of 25-foot area. We're proposing a buffer that's something that's reasonable. Obviously, to get something per the definition of buffer, it just wouldn't happen. I mean, there's no way that you would spend that amount of money on trees in that area. It just wouldn't be feasible.
So, this is Karen Fitzgerald. So, John, we talked about 3 larger trees per site last time. Is that off the table?
No, I mean, on the sites, we can still leave that note in there. Matter of fact, we still have it on the plan that, you know, within the front corridor, the front yard of these building sites, that there'll be, you know, 3 trees planted of the 2-inch caliber prior to certificate of occupancy. And we left that in there when we made this application for this revision to this plan.
Okay. Just wanted to clarify. I do want to give Amy Manzelli a chance. I know she notified me earlier that she has to go to another appointment tonight, so I'm going to give her a chance to speak.
Thank you, Chair Fitzgerald. Just a quick sound check to make sure everybody can hear.
Yes.
Please, thank you. This is Amy Manzelli from BCM Environmental and Land Law, here on behalf of several concerned citizens of Francistown who oppose these applications. Before I begin, I'm sorry I was a little bit late joining. Could you just please clarify, Madam Chair, are other members of the public permitted to speak following my remarks, or is it just me for the public tonight?
I would like it to limit it to you. The board is welcome to override that decision if they think it's necessary to open it up. But I feel like we've heard from the public over 2 meetings, and you know, that would be my preference.
This is Jerry Bernstein. I would like to see public comment and I thought that's what we needed, or we stated that we needed last meeting, but to have a time limit on that for each speaker.
Are there other board members who would like to weigh in on this?
I agree with Jerry.
I think Brad tried to speak, but you're muted.
Brad, you're muted.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's appropriate, but I'd say 2 things. One, if someone has something new to raise, you know, especially pertinent to the new things we're talking to,
Right.
That's what's most germane, not to have people repeat what we've heard a number of people say already. And it's also set forth in letters and position statements and all that. So, but these are these are changes to the plans. So I think it should be primarily limited to that, and there should be a short time limit because we've heard, otherwise we're going to be taking away from our time to deliberate and so forth.
I agree. Sarah Pyle.
And I would like to say one more thing before she goes on. I am not opposed to a buffer. I was just trying to sort it out, that's all. I do agree with having a buffer.
Okay, looks like I'm outvoted. So Amy, why don't you go ahead and then we can open it up to the public.
Thank you. I appreciate that clarification, and I'll try to be as direct and quick as I can tonight. I'm here with what I think is a simple message. Please deny this subdivision application. This application, even as amended, satisfies neither the letter nor the spirit of Francistown law. So I'm going to get into some of those details. I did send a letter, which I'm going to be summarizing some of the highlights from for the rest of my remarks. I sent that over email yesterday, and I believe that that was shared with the rest of the board. I just wanted to make sure. Okay, I see nods.
Yes.
Thank you for that. Overall, my client's position is that the applicants still have not designed any approvable applications. The recently proposed revisions, what they do is they serve only to memorialize the applicant's continued reluctance to acknowledge legal requirements and to invest in this project appropriately. So I have two requests on behalf of my clients tonight. First, I respectfully request that the board move and vote to deny the subdivision application. And second, to continue the site plan application. Specifically for the subdivision application, I have a detailed request that I put forward in my letter. To save time, I'm not going to read the whole thing here, but if you've had a chance to look at my letter, it lays out with specificity the many subdivision requirements that this application does not satisfy. So I just wanted to make it very clear exactly what regulations this application does not satisfy. I also, in my letter on pages 2, 3, and a bit of page 4, summarized all of my prior comments. Just, I know these records get voluminous and I thought it might be handy to have everything in one letter. So our entire position, at least in summary form, is in my letter from yesterday. And if you're looking for backup details, I would respectfully refer you to my letters from November 17 and December 15. So I want to make some comments on the new materials that the applicants submitted. In general, even with the addition of those new materials, the subdivision application remains unapprovable. The additional information just doesn't bring the proposed subdivision and lot line adjustment into compliance with the regulations. Specifically, first, as has been mentioned, so I'm not going to belabor the point, the efforts at preservation fall far too short of what is needed. The only thing that was proposed was roughly $2,800 to pay a licensed forester to buy 800 some odd extremely small seedlings. Assuming they all survived, the buffering benefit is not going to be had for many, many decades because, you know, trees grow slowly, especially when they start at such a small size. The 3 2-inch caliber trees in the front yards makes no difference to achieve the preservation and protection that's required. The plan is full of ambiguities. For example, who is the landscape designer? That's not defined at all. And why does that person get to change the landscaping plan? Most problematic, the area to be replanted is not even required to be maintained. There is no prohibition against cutting trees or removing vegetation in that area, which of course defeats the entire purpose of replanting and having a vegetated buffer.
No.
Second, the application would make for an undue burden on the town related to making various determinations. Again, I've listed all those in my letter. I'm not going to go over all of those so that we can save time. I know you have my letter. Just a couple of examples. Keeping track of whether the aquifer area has had more than a, quote, limited amount of salt used on it. Keeping track of whether, quote, any deviation from these areas, quote, has occurred such that a certified sediment and erosion control plan is required. I mean, this setup is just not set up in a way that the town is going to be able to enforce these conditions. Third, and finally, with respect to the new information, the applicant just continues to try to eke out an approval by providing only the barest shreds of information. I think the clearest cut example of this is with respect to steep slopes. What I heard the planning board asking clearly for, and what I read the regulations as clearly requiring, is an identification of all steep slopes on all areas of the entire lot, not just reporting observations on where buildings might be built. And this continued refusal to clearly identify slopes and provide other information, it just casts doubt on the entirety of both of the applications. So in conclusion, on behalf of my clients, I ask that the board please deny the subdivision application for all the reasons that I've just gone over as stated in my letter. The subdivision application does not satisfy the legal requirements or the spirit of Francistown law. Thank you for your attention to my client's concerns.
Thank you, Amy. All right, we can open the,
I see Greg Neely has his hand up.
yep.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Listen, I want to keep my comments as succinct as possible, but I had planned originally to read a letter that was written by 56, that was signed and endorsed by 56 people. I think I need to, I'll read it quick and I'll skip over some of it, but I think I need to read this into the record because I think I'm representing more than just myself, if that's okay. So we submitted a letter. It was dated originally December 14th. And let me just read this because there are new points here that have not been stated verbally. Quote, we believe the planning board has no choice other than to deny the two proposals under consideration along Stevens Road and Woodward Hill Road. This is an important point. The land under consideration here is in fact the open space surrounding the 1790 Fisher Homestead and an integral part of the Old County Road South Historic District. There was discussion at a previous meeting which incorrectly suggested that the Historic District is a collection of individual houses. To the contrary, this is a registered historic district, and the defining element of a rural New England historic district is historic homes and barns surrounded by open space. The land we are discussing here was purposefully included in this historic district application because the view up Stevens Road from the 2nd New Hampshire Turnpike was as classic an example of historic rural New England as you will find anywhere. And I hope people agree with that. Placing 4 houses and a commercial business in this view shed would permanently damage Francistown's one registered historic district and what we consider a valued cultural resource. I'll skip ahead in the letter. Now, some have argued that there's nothing in the National Register regulations that bars residential subdivision or commercial use. Therefore, the proposals must be approved if they meet the zoning ordinances, etc. We believe this misconception has arisen because those criteria are so easy to measure and that deciding whether proposals also conform to the master plan is more subjective. But when I and we read Francistown's master plan, there is little subjectivity. Let me quote from the introduction to the goals and strategies section of Francistown's master plan. Quote, it is of primary importance to the town that the natural and cultural resources be protected. Therefore, this plan seeks to direct new development opportunities to areas where growth will minimize the impact on these resources and preserve the small town character. End quote from the master plan. Because these proposals are located within town's only historic district, they clearly do not even remotely align with that overarching master plan goal and thus must be denied. And we are convinced that if these development proposals were to be approved and then appealed to the courts, a judge who reads the master plan for the first time will have difficulty concluding that these proposals do in fact align. Most importantly, not only do these development proposals permanently damage what we consider, somebody's not muted. Most importantly, do these development proposals permanently not damage what we consider one of the most pristine rural historic districts in all New England? These proposals are a monumental threat to all of Francistown. The planning board has not seen 2 development proposals with this much combined developmental intensity in more than 40 years. And if the most intensive development proposal in decades were to be approved within the one area of town that has the special distinction of being listed on the National Register of Historic Places, the precedent set would be permanent and devastating. If these proposals are considered acceptable within our historic district, this would leave future planning boards almost powerless to protect our natural and cultural resources. This would say we as a town have changed our mind and no longer intend to follow those master plan goals. This would tell large developers, come on in, we're open for business. This would negate decades of work to keep the development we see to our south and east at bay. This would materially threaten the quiet, scenic rural landscape that has attracted so many of us to this town. We do not believe this planning board wants to be the board that makes such a generational change to our town. We plead with the planning board, please follow our master plan and deny these proposals. You guys have that written letter. It's signed by 56. I'm not going to bore you with the names here, but I hope you'll listen to those words and think twice about what's being proposed here. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Neely. I think we have a few more raised hands. I'm going to take them in, I think, in the order that they were raised. So Kendall, then Pat Nelson, and then Stuart Brock.
Okay, sorry, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So I moved to Francistown from Washington, D.C. about 12 years ago, primarily because of how beautiful and iconic it is. It's kind of like a New Hampshire small town. And driving past, I take that road every day, and driving past that metal building with the semi-tractor trailers outside, if that's a sign of what's to come with this development, it's heartbreaking because it doesn't belong here. This is a quote from the master plan. If these development proposals are approved within the town's one registered historic district, how will future planning boards have any standing to protect the natural and cultural resources in other parts of town? If we are to protect the rural landscape that attracted many of us to Francistown, these proposals must be denied. I mean, if this is a sign of what's to come, it's really, really sad that a big, ugly metal building is on that corner now instead of the beautiful forested area that used to be there. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
I might add it.
Okay, Pat Nelson.
Can I chime in for 1 second, please? I would just
no, I'd like to give Pat and then Stuart Brock a chance to speak first.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead.
Okay, I won't revisit all the technical issues that have been exhaustively stated, but I would like to make a brief statement. The first time I drove up the turnpike and saw that building on the property, my thought was, who built a warehouse in that field? And I still feel that way. If you drive around local towns or do a Google image search for New Hampshire barn, you will not find something that looks like that, and especially not in a historic district. Clearly, there was no regard for tradition when that was built, and I actually think it should be torn down or have a traditional exterior built over it. So to add 4 new houses to this district would add insult to injury. You can't build a historic house. And open fields are a vital feature of this historic district, as evidenced by old photos of the area. Also, given the applicant's history, it appears that their approach seems to be to do what they want, change their minds, and then seek permission later. So I'm not confident what the future would hold if this application is approved.
Okay. Thank you, Pat. And then Stuart.
Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
First, I just want to thank the planning board and everybody involved, including the applicants. I know this can be very difficult, and I just want to say thank you. I've been in your shoes, as you know, on the planning board years and years ago, so I know this is not easy work and this is not an easy decision. But really what I'd like to make a couple quick comments. First, I think the planning board, in listening to the different meetings that I've attended, has put forth many good faith efforts. And many residents that I've spoken to find it incredulous that the applicants and their representatives continue to reject and dismiss them. It also seems clear to me, and Pat just mentioned this, that the applicant, through their actions and requests, seem to be expecting to be treated differently than the rest of the residents of Francistown. The question I'd like to have that the planning board consider is, One, why does the planning board feel that they need to make accommodations as a way to correct the applicant's acts? And also, when did it become necessary for a town board to base decisions on development plans on an applicant's means to pay for conditions? And this is the important part I want you to think about. Conditions that could have been met if the applicant had come to the planning board before using chainsaws and excavators. So I would also ask that you please deny this application, and I want to thank you for giving me the time.
Thank you. Meridian, did you want to respond? Oh, I think you're muted. John, I think you're muted if you're talking.
Yes, I was just going to make a point that if, if you had somebody representing 56 people making a speech and we're hearing the same things over, that I'd like to actually hear comments in regards to the new plans that were submitted, like previously posted out. I don't believe what we're putting on here is a monetary value to the property. I believe that we're actually putting a restriction on the property, which is a good portion of the property, which will be there for years to come. I could, debate quite a few things that were mentioned, if not all of them. My client does have reasonable right to use this property within the rights that everybody else does within the zoning ordinance. And, in regards to speaking to, the barn, people say they don't like it, they don't like the color.
Your picture's on my computer. Well, yours is both.
Somebody.
Someone is muted. Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
So they have the right, just like anybody else does, to use their property reasonably as the zoning ordinance depicts. So if they want to put a barn there and their choice is metal, to hear other people say that, I mean, that's just them saying, we're calling your house ugly, and I think it's inappropriate. If there was a historic district that wanted to be passed in town, there was an attempt for that. There was actually in the master plan, if you're going to point out to one particular object within the master plan, you have to look at it as a whole. It talks about growth. It talks about community. And they have the rights to do these things, just like everybody else does. There's other applications that are going to be coming forth tonight with people wanting to do things with their property. So, to hear all these people to speak, such hatred is what I'm feeling instead of a community. Have somebody tell you what you can do with your property, and then you go and say, well, I read the zoning ordinance, the zoning ordinance says you can do certain things, and you say, I just feel, if you want to speak to what we presented to that degree, I'd be happy to answer those questions, but I don't think we need to hear nonsense about, I think your house is ugly tonight.
Okay. I think hate is a little strong, John, and I'm not sure that's what's being communicated, but I'd like to let some of these other folks who have their hands raised speak. And again, please keep it to the subject. We're not talking about the site plan application right now. We're talking about the subdivision. So if you have some new comment on what was presented tonight or since the last public hearing, please go ahead. So let's, I think James Hamilton has a hand up.
Hi, yep, thanks. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll be really brief. Yeah, I guess my big concerns are, what this is going to do as far as setting a bar for the future. If indeed we end up saying, okay, yes, we're going to okay an actual subdivision in a National Historic area, especially as the way the history has gone and the setup to it, where's that going to put you in the coming years as other people come forward and say, I want to put in a subdivision too. I think we're setting the bar awfully low if we say yes to this one.
Okay,
thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. Rob Staub is next on the list. Rob, are you there? Are you speaking?
His mic is muted.
Yeah, I think you're muted. Okay, let's go to Paula Hunter.
Hello?
Oh, there you go.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, Johanna's going to speak.
Okay.
Hi, this is Joe Staub, and Rob and I live on Old County Road South, and we've been here for 45 years. So it's a very, very special road and a very special town to us. And we want to stress that it's a sense of community. I think everybody has tried to be really good stewards of the land. And I guess I would also ask that the planning board, as agents of the town, also be really good stewards in making the decisions that they are not easy decisions. I think the integrity of the area is so important. And I just wanted to say those few things that I think I've said enough.
Great.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Paula Hunter is next on the list. Go ahead, Paula.
Thank you. Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so on the last call, the applicant complained that even a 25-foot vegetated buffer is cost prohibitive. This argument is indefensible. If the applicant had done their due diligence and learned that this land lies within a historic district and presented plans for development to the planning board before cutting and altering the train, they could have left a more than acceptable buffer. The plan submitted tonight is insufficient to preserve an effective buffer. In fact, minimally 50 feet would be far more effective than the 25 feet of small specimens presented tonight. At this point, concern for the applicant's additional cost to bring the property back into compliance should be of little concern to the planning board. Rather, the board should be keeping the spirit of the town's master plan as the primary concern, and I urge you to decline this submission and retain our town's rural feel. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Harold Pope, you have your hand up.
Yes, hi, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay, Francistown cannot be held hostage by developers who start projects and then later approach the town with a plan. Approval of these proposals would set a dangerous precedent, threatening the ability to make sure future developments follow Francistown zoning ordinances and master plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Kate and Ben Taylor.
Taylor, Virgil Road, and I want to make sure that this whole thing doesn't get framed as people for development and against development. I think a lot of us actually understand the need for development in Francistown. But the fact is that this particular site really flies because of its designated historic district designation. And because of the density of this development. I mean, this is the biggest development that's been considered in Francistown for a long, long time. This just does not meet the master plan criteria. And, you know, I don't think that there should be any shame in the planning board saying no to this. It doesn't mean that they're saying no to development. It doesn't mean that we're saying no to development. It means that this particular development in this particular place is not appropriate. And it's okay for us to go there, and it doesn't mean that there won't be development in Francistown, you know, even in the vicinity somewhere of this area. But this particular plan just doesn't meet the master plan.
All right, thank you. David Taylor, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I have my hand up, and I think Kate just covered all the ground I was going to cover. So I'll
I'll
take my hand down.
And Jason B. Jason B.
Thank you, board members. I just wanted to respond to a couple of the points that have been said to clarify. So a lot of people are asking you to deny this as if it's, you know, applications come across your desk and you can just grant them or deny them. You know, maybe it's Tuesday and you just deny all the applications that day or something. It's not how it works. The planning board is not above the law. the citizens of Francistown voted for subdivision regulations. You have been elected to the board to follow those subdivision regulations and to ensure that applications comply with those subdivision regulations, which this one does. If you want to get into the specifics of how this application complies with the people of Francistown subdivision regulations, I would invite you to talk to Doug and John, who are, surveyors, and they're much better at the details than I am. But for example, there were some comments about their plan not showing the slope. If you look at page 4 of the plan, which I believe is the one that you have up for everyone to see, you can see the contour lines, you can see the slope, and then they've indicated slopes of different grades with different hatch markings. So, all the slopes are there, the contour lines are there, all the requirements of the subdivision regulations have been met. I also wanted to clarify, there's been a lot of reference to a National Historic District, and I just want to clarify that oftentimes when people use the term historic district, they're talking about a historic district that a town creates within the town under state law. So state law provides that towns can designate a certain part of town as being historic, and then that part of town has certain restrictions or different regulations for development than other parts of town. That did not happen in Francistown. It was proposed a few years ago, and the people of Francistown said, no, they don't want a historic district. So to clarify, there is no historic district in Francistown. Now, under state law, I'm sorry, under federal law, there's something that's called the National Registry of Historic Places. That was set up in 1966, and it's primarily for tax incentives and grants. So you can apply to have your property be on this national register. And if you get it on the national register, that's great. That then allows you to go and apply for certain tax credits and grants from the federal government to make improvements and maintain your historic property. So it's not about the federal historic program is not about restricting development or imposing certain conditions or something on development. It's a grant program. It's about allowing people to get tax incentives and grant incentives to maintain properties that are old and that have historic value. So it's saying that this property could qualify for certain federal tax incentives and grants really has nothing to do with whether or not there's any kind of special, development restrictions or development regulation. It's just not the way it happens. Third and last thing, there's been reference to the master plan. So if you look at the actual master plan, the area in question is designated in yellow. It's designated as developable, and it's designated as developable for single-family residences. And that is exactly what we're doing here. We are trying to take a large lot and turn it into 5 still pretty good sized lots, which each would have a single family residence. And that's exactly what the master plan provides for in this area. So that's all I've got. If anyone has any questions for me, you are welcome to ask me, but pending your questions, I will turn it over to the following speaker.
Okay, thank you. There's a few more raised hands here. I'd like to get through these. We'd really like to have a little more discussion on the board, and then we'd like to bring this to a decision tonight. So if you have, I'm going to just go through these next 4 raised hands here. I think there's Proctor H. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, Hannah Proctor, 2nd New Hampshire Turnpike South. I'm a really big proponent of the concept of planning, and very little of this plan was handled with this in mind. As an example, the buffer issue that we spent quite a bit of time talking about tonight, I mean, there's been an attempt to compromise on what is in our master plan and zoning. And we're still, it's clear, and I feel justifiably, some members of the board are still not comfortable with it, and I concur. And I just would respectfully ask the planning board to really not compromise, not feel compelled to compromise on the plan. So
Thank you.
ask that we deny it. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's see. Paula, you've already spoken. David Jonas.
Yes, hi. This is a procedural question. I've been observing all these hearings, and I'm going to respectfully ask that the board conduct what I consider to be a fair protocol. I have observed the Meridian representatives, the applicant's lawyer, interject at will whenever, dominate the meeting, and conduct a dialogue exclusive of any input from others. And I really feel this was, the chair had asked that it was time to hear from the public, yet we had to hear from Mr. Billigus about his defense. He should be taking his turn as anyone else at the conclusion of the public testimony. And that applies to the Meridian representatives as well. To interject and get into a debate with people relative to public testimony is inappropriate. We are directing these comments to the board and not to the applicant. So please show some fairness here. Thank you.
Okay. The last person is Paula. Again, do you have something new to say, Paula? And please direct it to the board.
I do, thank you. So two things. First of all, Jason asserted that the town voted not to approve this historic district. That is untrue. The town voted to not create a downtown historic district. This historic district was not brought to the town for approval or denial. So it was not a denial of this historic district as Jason has claimed. Secondly, I want to remind folks of the general vision that the community has asserted in the master plan, which has been updated in 2015. So there was several iterations to this master plan, again, most notably in 2015. The general vision was to retain rural, small town nature of the town, encourage less sprawl of residential development, preserve natural resources, and ensure that rural development results in minimal burden on municipal services. I do not believe that plan is in the spirit of our master plan. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I think that's all I see with raised hands.
That's all I see too.
Sarah?
That's all I see too.
Okay. If that's so, I'm going to close the public speaking portion and turn it over to the board for discussion. Yes,
I'd
Sarah.
like to make a couple of comments. And some of them actually are agreeing with some of the things that were said, but with the clearing and grubbing of this property that happened, protections that would have naturally been in place, and I would argue should have been in place for both the historic character of the neighborhood and the environmental slopes and wetlands have been stripped from this property. And I believe this work was done outside of the guidelines of both town laws and state laws. I would add to that I agree with Paula Hunter's comment that we cannot consider the cost to the applicant of repairing the damage that they've done. They chose to cut the land. This property subdivision, in my opinion, a development of this magnitude in a nationally recognized historic neighborhood on land with significant slopes and wetlands and no remaining vegetative buffer will exceed the carrying capacity of this land. And I believe there's no question that it will affect the historic character, simple rural quality, and ultimately the value of other properties in the neighborhood. I agree with Mr. Neely that in our master plan and in the myriad forums and discussions that I've been involved in with my 20 years on the Francistown Planning Board, the historic character, simple rural beauty are tantamount of importance to the people of Francistown. We have talked about this at length, and yet you have given, in my opinion, the applicants have given little or no thought to this in the plan that they have proposed. That's it for now.
All right, I'd like to make a comment here too. There was a comment earlier about the planning board's obligation to follow the ordinances and regulations. And Jason, I totally agree with you. And the thing that has given me pause for very careful consideration is exactly that. In the subdivision section 5A1, it says subdivisions must also conform with any pertinent federal, state, or local laws, ordinances, or regulations, and with the town master plan and capital improvements program. It doesn't say should conform, might conform, could conform, and it doesn't say that it must be followed we must follow the regulations or the town master plan. It says and that's exactly what my charge is to follow these ordinances, and I'm doing that. That's it.
Thank you. Betsy?
Yeah,
Yes.
I just have to say, I don't think this plan is presented as something that I can approve. We're required to provide for the harmonious development of Francistown, and that we are in conformance with federal, state, local laws, regulations, ordinance, plans, including the town's master plan. I don't think it's not adequate protection. It doesn't protect the rural quality or the historic character. Also, we haven't, we've talked about it a little bit. It's section Roman numeral 5H, the sediment and erosion. There's a whole bunch of stuff in there that is not, it says post-development runoff shall not exceed pre-development runoff, stripping of vegetation, regrading. Other development shall be done in such a way that will minimize soil erosion. Whenever practical, natural vegetation shall be retained, protected, or supplemented. It's supplemented. There's a whole bunch more stuff, and I don't think that this plan doesn't give that due consideration. And I cannot support this as presented.
I'd also just like to add one thing that, in my mind, this board has taken extraordinary time and care in suggesting ways in which we could approve a subdivision plan that was in conformance with our rules and regulations and guidelines. And I honestly don't feel that the applicants have taken our recommendations seriously. If it was just simply math, you keep talking about the 3 acres and 300 feet of frontage. If it was simply math, you wouldn't need a planning board. We are charged in our ordinance and in our regulations with looking beyond just the letter of the law. And our ordinances and our regs both say that we must be guided by all the rules and regulations of the town and the state. And in my opinion, this plan as presented does not meet the requirements.
Thank you.
I'll
Brad?
go.
Brad Howell?
Yeah, I've thought about this quite a bit. I don't come down on it quite like everybody else does. Honestly, I'm not for development, honestly. I am for historical houses and so forth. I live in one. But I think there needs to be more balance here. It does meet, I believe, most of the letter. There's few concerns that I have, but I think they probably could be corrected. But let's deal with the historic district, which has been much talked about. I think this is how I feel about it and the master plan. I believe my understanding of a master plan is it's a plan that's set up by the community for planning purposes, for goals, for a pathway to development. It's not in itself a law. And on the other hand, so I think it is fair to take into consideration, the value of a historic district. But on the other hand, I think we also have to recognize that when people apply for the historic designation, it's an honorific. It says that right on the website. It doesn't give that area any greater protection under the law, under state or federal law, that people can remove a property at will. They can tear down their houses. It's so, I think it's, maybe it's for grant purposes, but I think it's also to give those places an honor, to promote them, to encourage people to protect them. But I don't think it's a requirement of this planning board to say they're compelled to do that. I think the letter signed by 50 people said that. I think that's not true. I think it's one consideration. I also think that people do have a right to use their property if they, they meet certain requirements. I think this is on the edge, is part of an historic district. It's actually not taking down any historic buildings. I think much of the comments that went to the so-called ugliness of the horse shed are really not germane. It is true that a goal under the master plan could be, but I don't know if it's a stated goal, to establish an historic district that's approved by the town voters for this area, but that hasn't been done. And in those types of situations, you can actually approve the architecture, the look of a building, but Francistown doesn't have that. And I think that it's not just the people that come to this meeting and speak, but it's the voters of Francistown. And I think maybe they would approve one here, but it hasn't been proposed either. Who knows that? So I don't know the Shaddicks personally, and I'm not going to judge them. But I do say they have made some efforts. They've come back before us several times. They have revised their plans. I did encourage compromise, honestly, because I honestly believe that there's ways to work this out, even with, I believe the primary purpose of the buffer in this case was to protect a view shed. And so people would not have to look, or that they would have a canopy walking down the street, which is not unique to this area of Francistown, to be honest, and not to have to look at houses. And so they've proposed one. I'm sad to say that I believe that more trees could be added, for example, to that. I don't think it could be immediate. I think we could have a discussion still about the amount of vegetative buffer, whether it's adequate for the wetlands and other issues, but they have come back and done many of the things we asked them to do, not all. Now, I think if members believe they violated state law or federal law, they should say what they're talking about. I believe there's a good argument to be made, or certainly suspicion here by the Shaddicks that they didn't comply and properly file or timely file alteration of terrain permit application. That looks a bit suspicious to me based on the timing of it and based on the fact they claimed an agricultural exemption, but they never did it. But I believe we could have a condition, and a condition was proposed to deal with that be filed, and that'd be a condition of approval. I hear what people are saying and about preserving Francistown, but I think there is truth to the statement that our subdivision regulations allow for subdivisions, and a subdivision of 4 houses, which is unusual, or 5 houses for Francistown, is not by most people's measure huge. A subdivision that has 3-acre lots is not by most people's measure huge. One of the complaints was that they were gonna, you know, I was, my mother-in-law, rest her soul, used to call the little subdivision she lived in Detroit is Bedbug Row, because the houses were identical and they were all on 60-foot, 40 by 60-foot lots. But one of the concerns is that it wouldn't look historical because all the houses would be lined up in a row, but they did make an effort to adjust that. One of the concerns that was addressed that early on was the traffic, although there was conflicting testimony about whether a subdivision would improve, you know, what was the cause of increased traffic on Stevens Road. So they did, per suggestion, reduce the number of driveways. So I don't think it's whether you think under the, you know, overall this should be rejected. I don't think it's entirely fair to say they've done nothing or haven't tried to meet any of our requirements. They just see it differently. So I guess I don't know what to say. I'd say with a few minor, with a few adjustments, yes, I would vote to approve this. With a few conditions, I would still vote to approve this.
Okay, thanks, Fred.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah, I'd like to just weigh in a little bit here. I feel like, Fred, you know, like I'm not sure comparing this subdivision, whether it's big or small, is the point. I think it's all about what Francistown character is. And, you know, as people have said over and over during those last 4 or 5 meetings, you know, the zoning, it's a minimum standard. It is not a given. So the minimum lot size, the minimum building size, and again, the zoning ordinance is one of the considerations the planning board has to take into account. We're also charged with looking at, as we have said many times, the master plan. Now, the master plan, you cannot have a zoning board without having a master plan. The master plan is written to guide the legal zoning laws and the planning regulations. So it is at the top of the pile on what we need to consider. And I also feel like, yes, the applicant has come back. But I don't, you know, I honestly don't think, you know, real consideration has been given to some of the suggestions that the board is trying to work with the applicant on. You know, this buffer may, you know, the planting scheme here may work for the wetland restoration area perfectly fine, but I would say, you know, understanding what we were looking for a visual buffer along the road, this planting plan does not meet that. And I think it's disingenuous to say that this will be a buffer, because that's what we talked about last time. It's about the visual buffer. You know, this will not give anyone a visual buffer. I'm a landscape architect. I understand plants. I understand what these look like. I've actually purchased for my own sort of wooded edge some plants from the nursery. I can tell you that half of them survive, and that's just the way it is. But this plan, although it's an attempt at trying to, you know, give a response to what we requested, I don't feel like the buffer meets, you know, the requirement of some kind of visual buffer within, you know, anyone's time frame. So that's my comment. I kind of feel like we've asked for, you know, the team to look at an open space plan, which I don't feel was adequate attempt. We've asked them to consider fewer lots, and that was a no without any response. And we've asked them for more, you know, of this buffer, which I think is a big issue here. And Although this plan was put together, I don't feel like it meets that, you know, character that people are looking for. And that's my comment. Anyone else? Have a comment? Oh,
Chair, I
Jason.
have some
Yep.
comments. Yeah, just to respond to a couple of things. So, Member Pyle talked about because there was a cutting before this application, that creates some sort of a problem. Just to clarify, they filed a notice of intent to cut with the town. They filed a report of the cut after the cut. Neither the town nor the state had any objections to the cutting. So they did the cutting and then they did the subdivision. There's no prohibition against doing things in that order. And everything was done in accordance with town and state regulations. So, you know, I think it's an error to imply that because there was a lawful cutting prior to a lawful subdivision, that somehow is improper, inappropriate, or unlawful. It's just not the case.
Our regulations A4 talk about the subdividers, and we've actually already, I think Jerry brought it up and I think Betsy brought it up, that this should be given due regard to preservation and protection of existing features such as trees, or the restoration of it. So, and you know, honestly have a problem with a claim that there was an intent to cut to make a field, when at the last meeting, the applicant said that they actually had never even seeded the area. That doesn't make me confident that in fact, their goal was an agricultural field, which is what they claimed at the time. And especially since a month and a half later, there was a survey being done on the property. So, sorry.
And that issue that I was just talking about is connected to the AOT that member Howell raised. So just to clarify, because this has come up a couple of times and it seems to be an ongoing area of confusion. So in the land's present agricultural use status, an AOT permit is not required at this time. Once it is subdivided, then there will be an AOT permit. And that's not, you know, that's not like we're promising that I'm talking about, that's the mechanism of the law. So there will be, once the subdivision happens and it's no longer one big agricultural lot, but it's different residential lots, then there will be a requirement at that point to do an AOT that will involve all of the changes that have been made. So the AOT, there's some confusion about the sequence of things. It's not that you do the AOT and then you do the subdivision. You do your subdivision, then you do AOT, which is what is going to happen. And I just want to point out, a lot of people who have said this subdivision application doesn't comply with the subdivision regulations, they keep referencing vague language in the introductory sections of the regulations. But if you read the regulation in its entirety, particularly section A5, section 5, subsection A5 about lot size, subsection B11 about grading, section B13 about drainage, section C about driveways, section G about septic. It complies with all of the requirements in the subdivision regulations. And, you know, at the end of the day, you've have a subdivision regulation that the majority of the people of the town voted for. This subdivision plan was created in order to comply with the public's vote of the subdivision regulations. And it does in fact comply with the subdivision regulations. And for those reasons, it should be granted. That's all from me, pending any comments from you.
Yeah, just to clarify, yes, the AOT would happen with the approval of the subdivision plan and as a condition. And also there's a DES subdivision plan, a subdivision permit that would need to be received from, after they have a plan, if this goes forward. So there are a couple things that will be conditions of final approval, including the AOT and the DES subdivision permit. Just to clarify. Well, if there are no other comments, yep.
I want to go back. I want to go back and just restate that I believe this board has, as you said, Karen, and as we've said before, the board has taken an extraordinary amount of time and care in suggesting ways in which we might approve a subdivision that met our rules and regulations and our guidelines. And I agree with Brad that there has been some effort on the part of the applicant to at least hear us, but I don't believe they've actually heard us and come forth with actually what are given us anything that meet the concerns that we've expressed. I don't know. I'm at this point, this plan is presented does not meet the requirements of the subdivision regulations. And if you want specifics, it's A4, B14, all of H, as Betsy said, as well as various other bits and parts. So I would like to move that the board deny this application as presented.
Third. Betsy,
Second.
any further discussion? Okay, let's have a vote. I'm going to call off the names so that we aren't talking all top of each other. Brad Howell,
I'm opposed.
opposed. Sarah Pyle,
In favor.
Betsy Hardwick,
In favor.
Lisa Heath,
In favor.
Patrick is not here. Jerry Bernstein,
In favor.
and Karen Fitzgerald. I'm in favor. The application is denied. Okay.
Could I also, are we gonna say the application's denied because of subsections A4, B14, and all of H? For the record, I'd like to know what the true denial is, and honestly, if it's, I want to know the exact specifications as to why you're denying the application.
Those are among the things that, if you want a list of the reasons why I made my motion, I would also add the section 1 purpose of the subdivision ordinance. I would also add the purpose of the zoning ordinance. I would also add the definition of a buffer, subdivision section 5. Did I say A4 is part of what? my
A4.
motion was? That's what as I'm looking through what I wrote down during tonight's meetings, those are among the reasons that I moved to deny the application.
You're moving to the definition of a buffer and not the requirement of a buffer, correct?
I am quoting the definition of a buffer is in the terms that we all talked about the need for a buffer, and it's more abstract than that, Jason.
John.
We are looking to protect the view shed of that area. We are looking to, I'm sorry, was it Doug that I was supposed to be addressing?
John.
We're looking to protect the integrity of the neighborhood. And I thought we were all, applicant and board, in agreement that a buffer could help do that.
Which we provide.
The buffer that you guys presented tonight did not meet the zoning ordinance definition of a buffer. It did not meet the Conservation Commission's guidelines for a buffer. And it did not meet, I believe, the understanding that this board had of, and expressed to you in previous meetings of what a buffer would do to protect the neighborhood.
We met the specifications because you said, let me see the plan. And we proposed a 25-foot buffer, and it's exactly what we came to the board with, was what we talked about during the last meeting, which was not the definition of buffer. So, okay, anything else you want to add to for the record, please?
At the moment, no.
No.
Well, Betsy?
Just a comment that we had talked about building envelopes and that was not presented either.
That's right.
Yeah, it was, we actually moved the buildings to a different area as we talked about during the last meeting as well.
It's not a building envelope.
Not tonight. So the board did not discuss with me a need to do something different than what I presented tonight.
I don't think you presented a building envelope at all.
Neither did you tonight, and we brought it the last meeting, and I said I will provide sheet 4 to move the locations, and I started off my presentation tonight letting you know that I moved the locations. So once again, that's something that I addressed that you're putting in that I did not address. So for the record, I want that to be in there.
But you didn't address it. There are no building envelopes shown on the plan that you showed us. There's buildable acreage, but no building envelopes.
Exactly the way I told you I would address it during the last meeting. Jonathan. Okay. Jason, do you have any comment?
I don't have any comments at this time. I'll save the comments for the appeal.
Mute yourself again.
Chair Fitzgerald?
I'm muted. I'm sorry. I was talking away. Okay, so we're going to close the hearing for this case and move to case 20 SP02, which is a continuation of the hearing for the site plan review on the lot tax map 3, lots 17 and 18.
Yes, Doug Baroder with Meridian Land Services, representing the applicant. Do you have the plan to share, or can I share my screen?
Yeah, you could share. Do you see your share screen button?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
It says host disabled participant screen sharing.
Okay, hang on. Let me let me do that.
Now, I'd like to just do a brief presentation of the plan and what's changed since the December 1st hearing. We didn't discuss the application at the last hearing. And then there's a part of this application that's germane to the subdivision that was denied. So that's going to change. It's still saying that I can't.
Yeah, how about now?
All right, let me try one more time. Yeah. Okay. Share. And I assume you can see that?
I think yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yep.
So some things that were discussed at the December 1st hearing was showing the entirety of the property, which the use was going to be on, and that included this portion over here. So I just expanded the view to show the entire overall property. Again, these were the proposed lots. There's actually a lot line currently along this stone wall, which was proposed as part of the subdivision to be adjusted here. And I'd like to just get into that in the end if we can discuss the other items. One thing the board brought up is they wanted to see the location of buried stumps. We did work with the owners and they pointed out stumps are buried in this location here. I believe there's another place lower on the property. Yes, down here, approximately in that area.
And are
yeah.
those the only two places, Doug, that stumps were buried on the property?
In discussing it with the owner, that's my understanding. Yes, Sarah.
Thank you.
I'm not going to say there isn't one stump buried somewhere else. I don't know. I don't have ground penetrating radar, but I have no reason to not believe the applicant.
Okay.
You wanted the 4K, 4,000 square foot septic receiving area shown, which is shown here over test pit 7. I'd like to point out again that there is no septic system proposed for this use. We did discuss that at the first. You wanted a manure management plan, and what we discussed was adding a note to the site plan. I added that as note number 7, and it references the best management practices manual for agriculture in New Hampshire, which I believe is also what the Conservation Commission recommended. And we're also showing the current and proposed manure storage area in this location here, just below the test pit 7 area, if you will. You wanted some notes relative to the maintenance of the swales, and I added some general notes just to the site plan under note number 12, which are standard notes that we generally, if it was a much larger stormwater management system, we would have its own manual. And that's something AOT requires, but given that the only stormwater facilities are really 2 swales, we just added it directly to the plan. You wanted a note relative to basically a porta potty or portable sanitation facility that have a hand washing station, and we added that as note number 13. And we did revise the location of the porta potty so that it's, let us go to the next sheet. We put it in the back corner just so it wasn't visible from the right of way to help screen. I don't think that was an issue. It's just something we decided to do. You requested landscaping, which we did add to sheet number 2 in the form of, we chose several Colorado blue spruce and intermixed with Norwegian pine along both this was a residential lot line. I'm not sure that it's necessary at this point, but we did along the right of way, and there was mention along this stone wall as well. And then also, as the SADC suggested, they were going to plant 2 rows of apple trees in the front portion of the property. You also wanted to see some lighting specifications. So we did have a lighting and photometrics plan prepared where there's a light shown at each corner of the building and then one at each doorway. And then also, this was the relocated riding rink area. This may have to be revised given the current situation with the subdivision, but there was some poles proposed for that as well. And that does meet, that it all does meet dark sky compliance, and there's 0 illumination at any lot lines. And the other concern that was raised was in regard to erosion controls. The last time I was out there, the property was, for the most part, stabilized. I did see the Conservation Commission pointed out a couple areas of silt fence. So to put together an entire erosion control plan doesn't make a lot of sense at this point, but we did add details with guidance and notations on what to do in certain situations, such as this is a silt log, check dams, etc. Silt fence. So that's where we are at the moment. One of the issues we're going to run into is something the board had brought up last time. This is where the existing riding rink is. That was halfway between this proposed lot line. We were proposing to relocate it here such that it would be on the subject lot pending this lot line adjustment. So that's something we're gonna have to address in some way. And that's where we are for the moment.
Thank you, Doug. Board questions for Doug?
I have a couple questions. One is there listed any specificity to those plantings you referred to, the blue spruce? And
Yeah. Yes.
where would I?
Yeah, so on the second sheet in the lower left-hand corner, there's a plant list. And they're both 4 to 5 feet in height at the time of planting. For the blue spruce and the Norwegian pine.
So there's 14.
Yes, so there's 14 of the Norway spruce and 10 of the Colorado blue spruce proposed. And if you see here, it says size 4 to 5 feet in height.
Okay.
The apple trees, I specified those as bare root because it's very difficult to get apple trees in any sizable amount. And if they're able to get them, they can plant them bigger, but bare root are generally, you might get them up to 18 inches high, bare root.
Mhm. Okay, the other question I had, Doug, is can you tell me, you said an erosion plan does not make sense to submit at this point?
Well, the reason being is the site's already constructed. And it's, for the most part, it's pretty well stabilized when I was out there last time. Something I could suggest is that to go out and try and survey it now and look at it doesn't make any sense because there's too much snow on the ground and it's frozen, but you could have a condition that myself or a qualified professional go out in the springtime, review it, review what there are for erosion controls, and if there's any erosion issues, make suggestions, and then file a report back to the town or the board for the Shaddocks to follow up on. I mean, when I was there last, I didn't walk the entirety of the field down further where the residential lots were, but I didn't see any major concerns of erosion. I mean, there was a little bit of erosion in one of the swales, and there was a couple rills on the slope, but nothing that was overly appalling to me. But I did see in the Conservation Commission's report there was a few areas they noted where the silt fence had been knocked down or was overflowing. So there is some, even if it's minor, needs for follow-up. But I think when it comes springtime and the vegetation starts growing, it's going to be pretty well stabilized.
So Doug, the erosion control details that you have on your set, how are you suggesting those are just
they're intended,
or are they actually going to be implemented?
Well, they should be implemented, but the detail, what method you use to do the stabilization is always up to the person doing it.
And so there's no enforcement of.
Well, that's why I was.
This is the thing. Like, I don't want to say just like, well, you could do this.
Well, that's why I think
Yeah.
there needs to be follow-up, like you said. And that's why I suggested, as a condition, you can make it such that a qualified professional go out, look at it, evaluate the situation, file with the applicant, recommendations for correction, and also to the town, whether that be to the planning board or, I mean, I don't think Francistown has a lot of, maybe it could be to the building inspector, but I don't know that you have a lot of resources in your town.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't have resources to be.
Yeah, I understand you're a small town.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this is Patrick. So I mean, I think the only thing that was
Patrick,
concern.
welcome.
Yeah, thanks. I didn't get the notice earlier, so I just got on a little bit later. I apologize for that. But I think the concern really was that when we went out for the site walk, it was after mild rain. It wasn't even that heavy, and there was some erosion that appears to be there. So if there was we get to the springtime or something, if there was significant rainfall, what kind of impact would be there? So I think that was why some of those concerns got brought up.
Okay. Because can I just step back, Patrick, since you weren't here in attendance, could someone just, as far as sitting on this case goes, is, you know, we allow Patrick to sit on this case tonight, or?
Yeah, we don't have
Yes.
we don't have too many people on it, do we?
No.
No, but I just want to make sure this is all on the up and up.
That's why I didn't say anything on
Since
the
you
last
weren't
one.
here, and
That's why I didn't
we
say
are-
it on the last one.
okay.
But
So-
what time did he come in to this here to the meeting?
Yeah,
Before
what
the
ti-
last one got over.
So I didn't see what
Like
time you came in.
It was about 6:40, I think.
Oh, 6:40.
Yeah.
It's almost 8 o'clock. So you were here, okay. Okay, so before we opened this case, this
Correct.
site plan case.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Alright,
more
sorry.
the merrier.
Okay, sorry, I just wanted to clarify that. Yeah, so I guess that is a question on just maintaining the drainage control and sedimentation control. Like, no one has to reiterate the point that there's been a lot of grading on that site, and we had a really dry year last year, so we've yet to see what happens with the drainage in a real normal season. So that's a concern. I would like, speaking of conservation, I'd like Betsy just to talk about her communications with a letter from the Conservation Commission on reviewing the plan.
Okay, I think everybody has the letter, but a couple things actually a question I had. When we were at the site walk, I noticed down below the building, sort of not too far off from the edge of that roadway, there's evidence of some sort of underground drainage. There was pipe, a bit of pipe shown, stone and fabric around it. I just curious what that was.
Was it near the well area, Betsy?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, so I'll just, because I actually talked to Ron about this earlier. So how this is, just gonna zoom in here, okay? So you see the wells here, and then the water line goes to this, we called it a
Yep.
manhole, okay?
Yep.
So this is a drilled well with a well cap, and as far as I know, it was installed correctly with a certified driller. And they didn't put a submersible pump in the well like you normally would down at the bottom of the casing. They used what's called a jet pump, which sits up at the surface. Sometimes people put them in their basements. And what they did is they constructed that inside this manhole structure, the pump. Okay, so the well goes there. And what Ron did is, just so water wouldn't accumulate inside that manhole structure and then freeze, he put a little piece of under drain coming out of it.
Okay, that's what it looked like
Just
under
to
drain.
relieve, any potential flooding in there.
Okay, good.
Okay. The other,
Um,
sorry, go ahead.
I think it actually might be helpful if Betsy read the conservation letter.
Yeah.
There's so many people that are tuned into this meeting that didn't receive the letter. I think, Betsy, if you wouldn't mind reading it.
Of course I do. Okay, seems that the site plan and erosion control design should cover the entire area that's impacted by site development. It's obvious that more than just the area around the riding arena has been affected by site changes. It's strongly recommended that there be a peer review of the erosion control design to ensure it's adequate for the entire developed area. Concerns include topography, adjacent wetlands and streams, increased surface runoff due to the extreme changes to the site and impacts. And adjacent stream, increased surface runoff due to the, sorry, lost my place. Existing erosion observed, failure to maintain silt fence and the evidence of the underground drainage, which you addressed. Also at the site walk, a couple of the conservation commissioners went to look at an area where there appeared to be a considerable amount of sediment collecting. It was down towards, from what they told me, down towards the bottom of the roadway where there's some rocks and there appeared to be a lot of sediment. They wanted to go take a look at it, but they were stopped by a Shattuck family member who advised them that they couldn't go down there by themselves, that they needed to stay with the rest of the planning board. So we never got an opportunity to look at that and see what it was. We was just questioning what it is. Number two, it was recommended that a monitoring and maintenance plan for drainage systems be required and that there be some way to ensure compliance. We talked about outdoor lighting and light pollution, that we expected there to be a lighting plan, which there obviously is, and that if there was any question about it being in compliance, that it be checked by a qualified professional to make sure it was. We also mentioned this currently a portable light tower that's set up at the edge of the riding arena near Woodard Hill Road. That light's obviously not in compliance with the town of Francistown lighting ordinance, and its removal should be required. I actually will say I had 3 or 4 different people tell me that that light was on one night and they were driving up Stevens Road and it completely blinded them. Also concerning because they said there were horses crossing the road, children and horses crossing the road, and it was almost impossible to see them because of the blinding light. The other thing was the landscaping plan, which I think has been pretty well addressed. The only thing I think is a couple more plants maybe down along that stone wall side on the easterly side. When you come up from Woodard Hill Road and you look over that direction, I think you need a little bit more there to buffer it. Also, it was unclear from information provided exactly how many horses will be on the property or if the uses will extend over onto other lots. Clarifying that would be good. Manure management, which you've covered, the recommendation that, there are significant concerns because of environmental impacts, especially with the wetlands and streams located downhill. We have the Piscataqua River right there. It's a designated river protected under RSA 483 and the proximity to the aquifer. Also, new well regulations adopted by the New Hampshire Water Well Board in March 17, 2017 require or recommend that animals should not be penned or tied within a 75-foot protective radius around a water well, particularly if uphill. And we recommend that following best management practices for horse facilities as outlined in the 2017 Manual of Best Management Practices for Agriculture in New Hampshire be required. That a plan for manure management, including how it will be utilized or disposed of, should be provided. And the proposed location of manure storage noted in the plan. I see that it is noted. The one thing I'd want to make sure is that it's bermed around it or that it's not draining down into the wetlands. That's all part of the best management practices. And also just we note that there are educators and specialists available through UNH Cooperative Extension or NRCS that are available to actually help the Shaddocks develop and implement a plan. And finally, we recommended that a hay storage alternative to the trailers be provided that's more aesthetically appealing and more appropriate to the historic character of the neighborhood. That was it. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Betsy.
Yeah.
Sarah, go ahead.
I had a question. Those hay storage vehicles are pretty much, from what I gather, a permanent structure at this point on the property. They may move to go get more hay, but they're living there. So I actually agree with the Conservation Commission recommendation that it would be nice to have something more aesthetically pleasing as hay storage. But if the proposal is that those trailers are going to be used as hay storage. I think they need to be shown. I think hay storage needs to be shown on this plat.
Yeah, I'm
Okay.
wondering.
Can I just comment on that quickly or briefly?
Yeah.
Sure.
Because I did discuss this with the Shaddix. I just wanted to show you a picture of a alternative plan I did for another project with storage containers. I have actual photos of them, which may help.
Great.
I just want you to look at this real quickly. And you see this black here, which you can't really see very well. I don't know how well you can see it on your screen. I can try and zoom in.
All we see is like a black striped area with a green circle.
This here, yeah, the green circle is actually a tree up here, but I'll show you what those are and how well they're hidden.
I don't see anything.
No, I don't see anything either. I see just a black square with a little green circle in it.
This, you don't see the whole photo?
No.
No, you can't see it.
Oh, you can't see a street or any of that? Okay, hold on a second.
No.
Can you zoom?
Yeah, that's what I'm gonna try to do here. Did that help at all or no?
Now it's a big black blob.
Big black.
Let me, well,
Is it a photo?
yeah, it is a photo.
Huh.
Let me try this. Did that do anything or nothing?
No.
Okay.
Maybe you could.
Can
Let
you
me
email
try,
it to Karen and she could share it?
Yeah, you could email it, or
Can I email it to you? Is that what you're saying?
You want to try to close this window and?
Yeah, that might. Let me try stop sharing and then try it again, I guess.
Okay.
Is that,
Yep. Now try it again. Open the photo on your screen and then share that screen.
yeah. No, I can't get back to the darn. Come on. Yeah, I'm having some issues here.
Okay. I wonder if it would help if Melissa, are you there? I can't really see who's in that room. Yeah. I wonder if it'd help if you could just explain the whole system that you have there. You know,
Yeah,
where
so
the,
basically all it is it's what they were shipping containers. It's in a very commercial high-end area in Bedford, which obviously nobody wants to see shipping containers because they're steel, ugly, and multiple colors. So what we did is we just draped black fabric over them. And the town was so impressed with it, they let the person leave them there permanently. Because all you would see was just, it looked like a black wall. So I suggested the same method to the Shaddix, you know, to drape up this black fabric over the trailers, just to help shield them from the public view. And
Yeah.
Ron had also, you know, voiced his own concern. He doesn't like the way they look because they are, you know, not the most aesthetic thing out there. I mean, nobody can deny that. I mean, granted, they are behind the building.
right.
In terms of showing it on the site plan, I don't see any issue with us, you know, showing hay storage trailers or something of that issue. I mean, we could certainly add that.
And would you forward the photographs that you're referring to?
Yeah, definitely I will. Is that something I can email to you this evening, or you don't
Sure.
really have a way of
Yep.
getting it?
Yeah, you can send it to me. I can try to put it up on my screen.
Okay.
The lighting is like, thank you for the lighting plan. the lighting around the arena or the paddock area is a new thing. I don't think we
That's,
knew
yeah,
about that
that's-
before.
well, it
So,
was something you suggested, and then they, took your suggestion on that if,
yeah.
as you said, if they add lighting at a future date, they'd have to come back in front of the board.
Yeah, and what, can you just explain the pole height, and is it the same fixture you just were showing? Sort of like a modern Cobra head?
It's a modern LED Cobra head, yes, and the poles are set of the photometrics for 20 feet in height.
So they're
Can we
20
go
feet
back
high.
to sharing the plan so we can be looking at it while we're talking about it?
Yeah, let me try and get back to that, Sarah.
Sorry.
No, that's okay, it's just difficult with the, being remote. I assume you can see the plan.
Yes.
Yep. Thank you.
So there's 4 poles designated by these square symbols here. And the specifications for them are shown down here. This is the model number. That's the label quantity and symbol. And then the actual, whoop. This is the actual fixture itself there for the pole.
And so that's for the purposes of moving the horses back to the barn across the street, or just?
I think it was just in case they wanted to do something at night or towards dusk. I don't honestly.
Yeah. I mean,
my
it gets
understanding
dark
is
at 4:30. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They don't have any plans of doing horse riding lessons in the middle of the night. But
Yeah, that's exactly the. Okay.
So did you address the pole height and the light shed? Can we go back to the
Yeah, the
part of the plan where?
pole's 20 feet. So the light
poles were
fixtures.
set at 20 feet, and I can add a note to that nature. I thought it was down here in the chart, but I'm not seeing it at the moment. So we can certainly add the fixtures shall be restricted to no more than 20 feet in height, though.
And then your circles there are the only areas that light will shed on, correct?
Yeah, they're like contours for lights, but if I zoom in closer, you can see here. If you see these tick marks, okay, those are foot candles.
Yep.
And you can see along the property line, they're all 0.
Okay, good.
I'm gonna tell you, like here, 0.1 foot candles is,
Yeah, that's,
like a
you can't walk
night
there.
light. Yeah, exactly. I think the recommended minimum in parking lots is 7 foot candles. And not to say all parking lots are, some of them are like 30, so don't necessarily,
What's the maximum number that's there? They're too tiny for me to see.
oh, let's just zoom in, Sarah, and take a look. I see, a 5.2 here where everything's kind of overlapping, 4, 3.9. Over on the building side, it looks like, 2.4, 2.5. So, I mean, they're fairly dim, but it's enough that somebody could walk around.
Right.
Yep.
And again, they're
Thank you.
intended only for as needed, not to be on every night, all
Okay.
night long.
And so the plan is that portable light machine will go away, right?
I thought it had been removed, but
No.
I guess I'm mistaken. I think maybe what I was thinking of was there was a utility pole up near the new curb cut, and there was a light on that. I believe that had been removed, so.
Has that been removed? I'm still hearing about it.
My understanding is that light fixture was removed, but
I didn't see it.
yeah. Is that something Ron or Melissa could speak to if they're still there?
Yeah, Ron. Yeah.
Yeah, it's being removed. It's just kind of stuck at the moment, so.
And then regarding the, I guess there's a portable light of some sort that's no problem removing?
It's being removed. It's just,
Okay.
it's stuck currently.
Okay.
You can't get it out.
Okay. Okay, so Melissa, I just have a question, just so everybody understands. The horses will be moved from across the street to this facility for riding and lessons, et cetera, correct? I mean, it's not where they're, technically boarding. Is that correct?
But I guess I'm not quite understanding your question.
So your horses are kept in a, say overnight or, during feeding across in your house property, and then
So, yeah, so where would they be stabling?
stabling, correct? Thank you, Jerry.
Yeah, at her house. The riding arena has no stalls in it.
Yeah, right. Okay, I just wanted to make sure that everybody understood how you're operating. Okay.
Oh, I'm unclear on that because I thought last time Melissa told us that some of the horses were actually stabled here.
No,
Right.
there's no stalls in the riding arena.
But
Yeah.
Melissa, aren't they, you have some that you keep in the pasture by the riding arena?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, there's
Yeah.
some over there, sure. Yep.
Okay. So some of them just stay there permanently, and some are in a barn or across the street at your house. Yeah.
So tell us again, how many horses are permanently on this site?
It fluctuates.
I mean, it fluctuates. I move them around all the time, to be honest with you.
The what?
I said it fluctuates. I move them around all the time, meaning, I rotate my herd on a regular basis. It's good for them.
Okay, so just on any given Tuesday, how many horses are living on this site?
Which site are you talking about?
Are you referring to, what site are you referring to? I'm just making sure I'm answering this appropriately.
This side of the street, the riding arena and the paddocks and the run-in sheds.
Okay, so this side of the street, I don't know, it's about 5 or 6, I guess.
Yeah. Okay, and are you, so Doug and Melissa, so you're proposing to just flip that paddock over to the other site, to
Well,
the other
that's the-
side of that property?
Yeah, that's the one issue I was discussing in the beginning was the subdivision. I'm just gonna zoom over here. I assume you can still see my screen?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
So as part of the subdivision application, there's currently a lot line coming down along the roadway that goes, I'm gonna
Yeah.
say down the property, okay,
Yeah.
follows that stone wall. And it was being proposed to be adjusted to this proposed line here.
Yeah. So this
So
is,
this is lot 317 in its entirety right now, and this 318 is the rest of it.
yep.
So it wouldn't, this paddock wouldn't currently be between a lot line like this right now. It'd be on its own lot, but it's separate from this lot. And that
So-
was an issue that we had discussed at the previous hearing was,
What would happen?
right, the site use had to be on the one lot.
So for now, for this site plan to approve it, we're considering that the paddock stays where it is.
Okay, that's
Is
what
that correct? Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I would
I'm
like
asking.
to suggest. If the board's, I don't see there being an issue with that. Now,
Okay,
if
I
they
just want to
sub-
make sure that we
The board
understand.
can waive a regulation if we
Right.
feel that it's appropriate to do so.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I understand the concern previously was, this was most likely going to be sold off as a residential lot here, so.
Okay. Does the board have other questions?
Not at this point. I might do later once I've had a chance to review the information we got tonight, but
Linda, you have your hand up. I think you've recused yourself, but do you have a point of order?
Well, actually, when you're ready for public comment as an abutter, I do have a.
Okay, all right. So if the board has no more questions for the applicant, we're going to open the meeting to receive public comment. So Linda, you're first in line.
Yep, the only thing that I see that wasn't provided from the updated plan was back on the sheet that talked about maintenance of the drainage structures, whatever sheet that was, the note, was it note 12?
I think it was note 12. Yes, note 12's A through D.
Yeah, so I only see discussion about grass swales. I don't see any discussion about how that rip-rap gully with the pipe underneath the road that comes from the Manua area onto the riding arena area. There's no discussion about how that ought to be maintained. And the site walk that was conducted at that time, that pipe was already more than 3/4 filled with dirt, so that it's going to be hard to maintain that pipe with the level of large riprap in that swale. So I was hoping that the grass swale is kind of easy to maintain. You can see if they're washing or not washing, and you can mow them or not mowing. But I don't know how you maintain those kind of riprap swales because they're, I don't know how you maintain them.
Right, that's a good question.
And it also brings up another point that I think all the while that we've been talking about this, we talked about there was going to be an alteration of terrain. Oh no, that was only on the other portion of it. But I just want to be sure that the Conservation Commission, Betsy, if you could speak to it, that without an AOT being done now, because they're not going to do one with the subdivision, the slope that was going to be part of the Woodward Hill Road lot and the back end of it, do we need to do additional erosion control plan? Because now we're not doing an AOT.
Yeah.
I don't think on the existing lot 317, they ever did any modification to the wood line or clearing. Correct me if I'm wrong. But.
No, I don't think so either.
Yeah, and
isn't that where the replanting was recommended by the forester?
yes.
So
down. I'm sorry. I think maybe what you're referring to, Sarah, is down below where it had been cleared into the wetland buffer.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Down at the sort of the bottom of that black line where that whole slopey.
Right. That I would suggest that the board make it a condition that reforesting plan be implemented in that area, and or other areas where the wetland buffer was cut.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Per the recommendations of the forester, if that's amicable to the board.
Okay. Amy has her hand up. Amy, go ahead. Amy Manzelli.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. Again, Amy Manzelli on behalf of several concerned citizens who are residents of Francistown from BCM Environmental and Land Law. Thank you for the opportunity to address the site development application tonight. I have a few points that I'll just try to make as briefly as I can. Again, in my letter that was circulated to you over email, these points are covered there in summary form, and they're covered in more detail in my prior letters. This application suffers from a very big threshold problem, which is that the applicants have not identified any use that they are proposing to do that is permitted by right. Even looking at the use statement, which the applicant submitted as a supplement to the application, I'm not sure, towards the end of last year, it does not clearly identify a use permitted by right. Trying to read the tea leaves, there's like 5 different uses that it could be. It could be animal care facility, children's or families camps, daycare center, commercial recreation facility, or a stable and riding academy commercial. And none of those are allowed in this area. Stripping everything down, the only thing that would be permitted by right in this area would be personal agricultural uses. So this being an equine concept, that would mean, horses exclusively for personal use. And it's clear that that is not what's being proposed. What's not clear is what use that is permitted by right is being proposed. Without that threshold fundamental question being answered, it's nearly impossible to look at this project and see if it should be approved as a site development. So I really want to emphasize that point.
Okay.
Couple other points.
Can I interrupt for a second here?
Yeah.
Amy, I disagree with you. If you look at the zoning ordinance table of uses for the Francistown zoning ordinance, stables and writing academies are permitted with site plan review. You're correct in saying that animal care facilities, children and family camps, and commercial recreation facilities need an additional approval, but you're incorrect in saying that that's a variance. Those are permitted by special exception in the town of Francistown. And if you look at the last page of the Francistown zoning, last 3 pages or 4 pages, there's a table of use and the permissions needed in order to get them. And also, if you look at, I think it's section 7 of the zoning ordinance, it spells out specifically the uses that are allowed by special exception. So they are permitted, they are uses that are permitted in the town of Francistown by special exception.
Yep. Thank you.
I can't remember honestly about churches. I think those are also permitted without anything but site plan review and without a special exception.
Did you?
Thank you for that. What I'm saying is permitted by right means you can go ahead and make that use without having to obtain any zoning relief, not needing a variance and not needing a special exception and not needing a conditional use permit or any sort of special zoning relief. Now I am scrambling to open the zoning ordinance on my screen here. My understanding was that there were overlay districts that applied here that impacted the permissibility of these uses and made none of them permitted without special zoning relief. For the sake of expediency, and jumping to something that I was going to say at the end, my anticipation has been and continues to be that the applicants plan to submit a revised plan, and we would like to reserve the right to comment on revisions that come in. And in the course of doing that, I would like to clarify the permissibility of the proposed use. But I still stand by my comment that the uses identified in the zoning ordinance are not identified in the application. I do not feel that there is clarity on exactly what is being proposed here. Let me move on here. There's a site plan regulation, and all of these were cited in my letter, that requires, or excuse me, that authorizes the planning board to consider the fitness of the land for the proposed use. And our position is that this land is not fit for this proposed use. And when I'm talking about the proposed use, I'm talking about the building existing and having a somewhat unspecified commercial equine operation associated with the building. I don't think my client's position is that this land is not fit for the building or an equine operation. This application, the site development application, has some of the same problems that the subdivision application had. One of those is that there's a lack of before and after plans. Anyone, as I know this board has, who has been to this property can see that there was clearing and there was grading and there was construction, all before any applications were filed. And it's impossible to look at this application and know what the existing conditions were before those activities occurred and then match them up with the proposed conditions. Again, the applicants have not provided sufficient credible evidence on the record to show that they are complying with the zoning ordinance, the master plan, and the the site development regulations, and all of the applicable laws. Our position is that an after-the-fact alteration of terrain permit from the State Department of Environmental Services as a result of all of the clearing and grading is required. And that's regardless of a subdivision not moving forward. And that not having been done is another impediment to lawfully granting this site development application. The applicants, this is an important point, the applicants have not provided any credible evidence or any evidence that this proposed project, which is, already partially exists, would not impact adjacent property values or the ability of adjacent properties to be used appropriately, is the language from the site plan regulations. The applicants have to prove that the proposed project would not, quote, discourage or interfere with the appropriate land use on adjacent properties, end quote. And they also have to prove that it wouldn't decrease adjacent property values. And there is no information about how these proposed applications would satisfy these legal requirements. The applicants, similar to the subdivision application, when it's a site development application, the applicants have a burden to preserve and protect existing features. This is in section 5A4 of the site plan regs. The obligation specifically is to identify and give due regard to the preservation and protection of existing features such as trees, scenic points, brooks, stone walls, streams, rock outcroppings, etc., historic landmarks, and other natural resources. Again, this area being part of a historic district included in the National Register of Places puts this land amongst other of its attributes, including environmental attributes, on this list. This land contains valuable features that site development regulations require be preserved and protected, and this plan does not achieve that. Because there's so little information, the planning board cannot exercise its power to have impact studies prepared, which would be very helpful in this case. The proposed uses are not commercial livestock operations. And so the automatic waivers that the applicants claim they're entitled to, our position is that they are not entitled to those automatic waivers. Now, the applicants did a sort of an either or approach in the application. They said, if the planning board feels that they don't qualify for the automatic waivers, they also provided information to actually meet those standards they were seeking waiver from. But that scant little tidbit of information that they provided for each of those requirements does not satisfy those requirements. And lastly, for my points here, before I make a couple concluding statements, the applicants have not met the legal requirements to qualify for the non-automatic waivers that they're seeking. And I go into detail on that in my letters. So just in conclusion, our request with respect to the site development application tonight is that the board vote to continue the application in anticipation that the applicants will be submitting a revised plan. And I would like to respectfully reserve the right to comment further on revised aspects of the plan. Thank you for the board's time tonight.
Thank you, Amy. Let's see, I do
Greg
have a raised
Neely.
hand. Greg Neely, okay.
Yeah, I'll just speak. I guess this is a point of order that Amy's raised. It's been quite difficult for us abutters to digest the plan when it's just been presented to us in the last 30 minutes. I would respectfully request that we be allowed, that this discussion be continued to a later meeting to allow us to examine this plan. I can say what's going to be most concerned for the abutters and those of us in the historic district. I noticed this plan has 3 trees in the northeast corner. I think we just discussed a buffer much too long. I think it's pretty clear 3 trees in the northeast corner of this does not produce the visual buffer that an historic district is going to require. I'd love to ask the board to continue public comment so we can digest this and prepare our statements.
Okay. Thanks, Greg. I just want to just reiterate, Amy, I don't know if you were at the meeting. This building was given a building permit prior to by the town prior to the realization that it wasn't actually a commercial operation. So that's the sort of question of before and after. Like,
yeah, may I address that?
We're kind of just stuck with that realization, that reality, and so you know, I'm not sure the applicant, you know, went through the building permit process and the town granted it, and here we are now. So I understand what you're saying, but I'm not sure if there's any backwards pedaling here. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. I am aware of the procedural history of the permitting process. I did need to step away from the meeting. I apologize for that. Our position is that what was applied for was a barn for exclusively personal use, and that what is sought now is a barn for commercial use. So this is a new use, and it's probably best for the board to analyze it as such. However, I think there's some question as to whether when the barn was applied for personal use exclusively, whether there actually was commercial use happening. Early on in your certified record, I submitted you know, internet printouts and other documents that clearly indicate that commercial events or things of a commercial nature were occurring on the property based on a building that was represented by the applicants to be built exclusively for personal purposes.
Yeah.
So I understand there's a little hen and egg problem here, but I don't think it's the board's problem so much as the applicants.
Okay, thank you.
Karen, can I add a point here?
Yeah.
We talked briefly about the use now proposed being on 2 different lots, and I kind of gave an off-the-cuff comment that I've since identified the actual law, which I should have done first. Under our site plan regulations, section 5.6, consolidation of site, the language is a lot stronger than I had originally remembered. So it's what it says is all integrated parts of a site development shall be located on a single lot. If more than one lot is involved, subdivision approval of a consolidation or lot line adjustment shall be required prior to an approval of the site development plan. So I would like to have the time between now and our next meeting to investigate the ramifications of us looking at a plan that is, as proposed, is contrary to the subdivision regulations.
Is it subdivision regulations or site plans?
I'm sorry, site development regulations.
Okay, all right, just for clarification, thank you.
Yep, sorry.
But I mean, even though it states that in your site, you could still waive the requirement.
We can do, but it's, and had it been worded as a suggestion, I would feel less trepidation about waiving it. But because it's so strongly worded, I would like to have some time to research the ramifications of that waiver.
I understand.
Yep.
I would.
And we haven't formally requested a waiver either at this point, but that's.
Yeah, I get that.
Something we, based on the way the subdivision went, you know,
Yeah.
so.
I think, Doug and the Shacks, I think, you should take another look at your buffer proposal, planting plan.
Yeah.
I would like to, suggest we continue this for the next
Right. Just
session.
in regards to that, though, what would you like us to revise specifically or add to the landscape plan?
So I'd personally like to see native plant material there. I
Okay.
know it sounds like the apple tree species are for apples,
Yeah,
to grow apples, so that's
right.
fine.
That wasn't intended to be part of, you know, buffering, which is why I picked the Colorado blue spruce and Norwegian spruce or pine. They grow very fast and they do create a dense
Yeah.
buffer. I mean, I understand the native planting part, but it's hard. I mean,
Yeah.
what do we put in, hemlock or?
No, they don't.
No.
No.
I'm just looking for suggestions, and
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to come back with deciduous trees and then have you say, well, that doesn't make a dense all year
No.
buffer, you know?
I hear you. Yeah.
Betsy, did you have your hand up on that?
I did. I wanted to say not hemlocks.
Yeah. No,
That's when
not
they just
hemlock.
lose them.
They
And,
just
and
die.
and I agree that I think those varieties grow quick.
Yeah.
although
I mean, that was just my own personal.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I understand. And I mean, and yes, both those species aren't native. I understand that too.
Yeah.
But I was trying to find something that met, you know, there's been a lot of discussion about what the buffer says in the zoning. So I went and read it and I'm trying to meet that, but
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Doug, I have
The
one
other
other
thing is
question.
that, I don't know, the apple tree is like, what, when you say bare root, that can be, I know what you mean when you, I've
right. That's
I've
why.
purchased them myself, but,
Yeah.
again, they're tiny. They're
I know.
whipped.
They're
Yeah.
they're hard to get though in full grown size. Just in specific species. I've tried to do it before too, and you got to go through a mail order catalog.
Yeah. You got
And
to
the only
get
way
them
you get
from-
this stuff is, or you happen to go to the nursery or where they sell them and they have what they have.
Okay. I would say that the apple trees aren't really going to provide a whole lot of buffer, but they're certainly
enhancement is
acceptable
right,
to plant if you're trying to grow apples. That's fine.
Yeah, that was the point of them.
I think it's more the road edge
Mhm.
and the sort of the view headed west up of the barn to think about. But
On the western side to help protect it from
yeah.
the second
Yep.
Hampshire Turnpike view, if you will.
Yes.
I thought we
I
had
mean-
originally talked about doing tree line. Sorry, Betsy, I just jumped right in front of you without raising my hand. A tree line along the road, the drive that goes down past the well. I thought that area was going to be planted with that's a similar treatment in order to screen it from the Turnpike and Woodward Hill.
Yeah, I think,
You should probably listen to Betsy, not me.
Yeah. Go ahead, Betsy. Betsy, you're on.
Okay, so they have that line of trees started along that northeasterly edge. I think that protects
Okay.
Woodward Hillside. It just needs to go down further towards the south.
Yeah. How far would you like to see it extend to the south? I mean, like to the building limit or further or?
Probably well, it's hard to say looking at this plan, but
It is. If you drive to the end of Woodward Hill Road and look over,
Mhm.
so you can't see the building from wherever that ends.
Okay.
Sorry.
I mean,
The other
they're
It's a
4-foot trees.
technical term.
Yeah. Can I just say one other thing? We talked about the planting, we were talking about the reforestation plan along the wetlands. We did talk about that at a Conservation Commission meeting last night. And on our board, we have a very experienced, now retired forester who's done this sort of stuff a lot. And he recommended that the plantings be done at 6, instead of 10 feet apart, 6 feet, because there is generally a pretty high mortality rate.
Yeah, there is.
Yeah, so that was the Conservation Commission's recommendation.
Okay.
I just had one other question regarding the landscape plan. So I had provided landscape buffer along that proposed eastern lot line, which no longer, or excuse me, western lot line, which no longer exists. Is that something the board still wants to see, or could that
Yes,
be?
because that will screen it from driving up and down Stevens Road. I
Stevens
mean, I think
Road.
that screening is still required, whether that's a separate use or not. I think that what we're trying to do is screen
Mhm.
the arena building from the neighborhood. So yes, absolutely.
And I just wanted to clarify too and make sure, are we okay with the plantings as presented, or do we want to see something different? If I can just get a board, it seems like Betsy was okay with it.
Yeah, I
The other
am.
members, but.
Will that be
okay.
a sufficient visual buffer, Betsy and Karen, who know more about this than I do?
Eventually, yeah.
Yeah.
How eventually?
Well, they go in at 4 feet. That's what is proposed.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. It would be, I mean, to screen that building, it would be 10 years or more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At least to cut down it. Is there any benefit to doing rather than a straight line, doing a staggered, a front and back, like doing a two-tier stagger buffer there because it will fill in faster?
I don't know that it would fill in any faster, but I think it looks better if you
I do
stagger them so
too.
they don't look like I
Yeah,
think it looks more like a
staggered,
natural.
yeah, more natural looking.
Right. And when one dies, it
Yeah.
doesn't look like there's a line with one missing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Can I make one more comment?
Yes.
Related to the types of plantings in the forestry plan along the wetland. The forester had recommended, I think it was the songbird package. I would
Yep.
just recommend that, having planted all these different things myself and being very familiar with them, that along, particularly down there, we could vary that. They have a native species package. They also
Yeah.
have dogwood package. Dogwoods would be very nice in that particular area, and not all the same, but maybe mix them up.
Yeah, I was, thank you. I was going to say that too, Betsy. I don't think all of those in the songbird wildlife
Right.
are native.
Right.
The crab apples are definitely not. So I would just change that to be that native, or I like the dogwood package too. That's a good
Yeah,
one.
native species and dogwood, I would be my preference. And
Yeah.
dogwood grow quite quickly generally.
Yeah.
So it's basically swap out the songbird package for the dogwood package.
And native species.
And native species.
Or native
Yeah.
species, okay.
Or
Yeah,
both.
mix. I'd like to have a mix.
Yeah.
Okay.
Little of both.
Yeah, the more variety, the better there.
And the revised plan is going to show that reforestry bit down on that slope, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it would be good to show, since this is one property originally, it'd be good to show
Yeah, I
that,
think we gotta show the whole property and just,
and the other location that's up.
Yeah.
Both of those restored plantings.
And I also, when Betsy read the Conservation Commission's recommendations, I think if you, Doug, look at those and try to incorporate those recommendations into the plan, that would be great. Because I think most of those things are things that we've expressed concerns.
yeah, I'll provide you a written response too with how we
That'd be
addressed
great.
or added.
Okay.
Just for clarification, as it's been brought up, would it be good to just put a purpose of plan on there and have the use statement kind of reiterated as to what the applicant's intent is directly on the plan, or do you think that's
That's
not
actually a great idea, Doug. The addendum that we got, that little list that Melissa gave us would be great to have included on the plan. Excellent idea.
Yeah.
I don't think we have any more raised hands in our group here. I'm looking. Okay. So, yes, Brad? Oh, you're muted?
Yeah, yeah. I'm
Yeah,
muted, I'm
good.
sorry. I'm
You're
done.
good. You're
Yeah.
done? Did you have something to say?
No, no, no. I'm
Okay,
good.
okay. I would like to move to continue this meeting to the 19th, if we are, unless there are other comments.
I'll second.
Second.
Second. Let's vote on that. Brad? You in favor?
Oh, he's muted.
Muted.
Muted again.
In favor.
Okay. Sarah
Use the
Pyle.
nod emphatically.
Yeah.
Okay.
Not in the sleep.
Sarah, yes. Betsy?
Yes.
Yes.
Lisa Heath, are you still there?
Yes.
Thank you. Patrick?
Favor.
Jerry Bernstein?
In favor.
And Karen Fitzgerald in favor. Okay, so we'll continue the site plan application for January 19th meeting.
Yep. Can I also ask that when we close the public hearing of this, and I suspect that there'll be some discussion about having new comments with new information.
We haven't closed the public hearing.
Okay.
Yep.
Oh, we
not
haven't closed the, I thought we closed the public hearing.
No.
Nope.
Nope.
Okay, never
Nope.
mind.
It's just continuing for next
Okay,
time.
thanks.
Yep. Okay,
Move to adjourn.
move to adjourn. Yes,
So
thank you,
moved.
everyone.
Thank you.
Good night.
Bye.
Night.
Thank you.
Yep, thanks.